Welcome to the Platinum Agent Podcast, where gold is just the beginning. I'm Renee Ruth, top producing agent, global real estate educator, and, believe it or not, a 2025 Grammy nominee. But today I'm here to help you hit the highest level in real estate. This is the Agent to Agent podcast designed to help you grow, scale, and reach platinum status in your business. Expect powerful strategies, expert insights, and real conversations about what it takes to dominate in real estate. And of course, I'm not doing this alone. My co-host Joshua is here too. He may not talk much, he is a dog after all, but he's got a nose for success and a talent for keeping me on track. So if you're ready to stop playing small and start thinking bigger, hit that subscribe button and let's go platinum together. Welcome to Platinum Agent Podcast. My name is Renee Ruth, and I am a top producing agent in the state of Virginia and a 6-time icon agent and the host of this podcast, where my focus is getting inside strategies, expert interviews like the one today, as mindset-focused conversations will help you build your business and your brand and help you provide more value to your clients. And in an effort to do this today, I'm so excited to have Rick Albert on this podcast. He is a Los Angeles Realtor and investor, and he's also ranked in the top 10% of agents in LA. He specializes in luxury homes, investment properties, and creative financial strategies. But there's so many more things that we're going to talk about in this podcast that I know are going to be valuable for agents and clients alike. So Rick, welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Likewise. So one of the things everyone always wants to know is, how did you even get into real estate? Did it start investing? How did you get into this and grow your business?
Yeah. So it was December of 2009. Excuse me. Didn't know what I wanted to do. So a buddy of mine from college said, hey, why don't you come down to visit? And I want you to meet my dad. He was very successful in business, all that. So I met him, and he was all about real estate. He had co-founded one of the largest mortgage companies in the country, and he had a development side. So I moved down to LA and I started working on the development side. My first job was buying properties at the courthouse steps. Yeah, it was totally wild. I was like 22 years old. Here's, hundreds of thousands of dollars in cashier's checks. Let's go bid on property. It was fun. At first it was a little tricky because they talk so fast, but you catch on.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and then I started doing I was like an assistant project manager. So I would help with the cash for keys. If there was someone living in there, we'd fix them up, flip them. Then we started doing new construction. Okay. And we started selling a lot of these homes. We're working with different agents. And as you know, there's some great agents and then there's some really bad ones. And we're like, we could do this better than most of the bad ones. Okay. And we can apply everything we've learned here to better serve our clients. And that's kind of how we got started. And so yeah, I was doing that for a few years, and then it became a full-time agent. And then I do my own investing, mostly out of state, but I'm also a house hacker. So I buy properties. I'm on my second one here in LA, where we buy a home and then fix it up and either rent by the room, which I did with my condo, or I actually built out an ADU, accessory dwelling unit. And so it's like a second unit, converted the garage. Yeah. So then my wife and I lived in the ADU, rented out the main house. Now we've switched. Now we have more space.
Yeah.
And then here we are.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So I'm just picturing you as a 22-year-old standing at these steps with crazy amounts of money in your hands.
Yeah.
I know as a 22-year-old, I was busy studying to try and get a degree, which has made me no money. So I love that for you. And I think anybody listening who's younger, this might be a really cool path. I know that. Yeah. So just to kind of bounce off of that, all these experiences have led you to a great amount of knowledge that's allowed you to stand out as a real estate agent. And what would you say helps any agent stand out in a competitive market?
Yeah, I think really it's not just, how do I word this? The challenge in our industry is really, the name of the game is client acquisition. And that's kind of the challenge, because it's a balancing act between that and serving our clients.
Yes.
Right. The best way possible. And so what I've learned is, especially on the project management side, for example, I have clients for closing next week. I've been able to help them. All right, let's get bids. Let's organize these bids. Let's get this stuff going. So by the time we close, all that work's already underway. I don't have to manage it after the closing, but it's all set up for them.
I
And
love
for a lot of clients who've never done a construction project, it doesn't matter if it's big or small, they like being able to have someone to lean on. Plus, as like an added bonus, I say, look, if you ever need me to swing by, let me know. It's like a touch point.
Yes.
So now even after we close, I have clients who are like, hey, we want you to see the finished product. So it's a way for me to stay in touch with them without having to spend money or anything like that. And I get to serve them.
That's fantastic. So you're building these long-term relationships. It's
Exactly.
it's not like a one and done, get a paycheck and get out. Like these are
Right.
long-term relationships. Okay. And I think this would relate to my next question because and a lot of agents want to niche down on jump. I don't necessarily recommend niching down from jump, depending on market maybe, because you're so new, you need to really just
dive in.
Yeah, build a funnel, right? And then find your niche. But I'd love to hear your perspective on niching down.
Yeah. So I think the challenge is, I don't know if you saw, I think Inman reported, was it like over 70% of agents didn't close a single transaction last year?
Yeah.
It's some wild number.
70%. Well, it was a really bad year last year for
Yeah.
It was a bad year for real estate.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of that has to do with people are door knocking, which is fine. That works for them. But it's like, but what value are you adding when you door knock? Oh, here's sales in the area. Well, here in LA, I can look up those same sales on Zillow. You can look at past sales.
They're getting savvy, but we have Chat GPT to tell you everything.
Right? Like, what's my house worth? Well, tell me about it. And so I think what's happening is a lot of these agents that I call them generalists, they're slowly fading out because they're not providing any sort of unique value to the game.
I just had a conversation with a lender today, and I was actually telling the lender this, and I said, you are a lender among many lenders. What is you that makes you stand out from the other lender? And what's great is someone listening might be like, oh no, I have nothing that makes me unique. No, you do. Every person has something that makes you unique. And I think that's okay. So carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. And so but to your point, it doesn't have to be real estate related. It's like, what if you're a single dad? Hey, look, I can relate. Right. Right. It's like, okay, hey, that's just easy because I have a 1-year-old and I'm not a single dad. I have a loving wife, but
dad mind. Yeah.
Right. But it's like, I can go and say, okay, like I have clients who are thinking about having kids. Hey, you need more of a yard. In the first year, you don't really need a yard. The kids are barely crawling. But it is something to think about, right? Like there's all these like little things. On the investment side, we go into a property and they're like, I don't really like the floor plan, or it's missing a bedroom. It's like, well, actually, this dining room's kind of wasted space. What if we converted this to that extra bedroom?
Thinking outside the box.
Exactly. So when all these other buyers and all these other agents are missing out on this property, my clients are getting it.
Because they can see past. Okay, so right. It's being able to put yourself into the shoes of the client that you're working with and help.
Exactly.
There is no perfect home. I have clients that are you're in LA, you've got $1 million houses all over the place. Even those guys never have it perfect because unless you're building it, you're making a compromise. If you're not building it, you're making a compromise. And even in building, because all of a sudden this is cost extra if you want it, this from the investor. So if you as an agent cannot help them come to options that are not just there when you walk in the door, you're missing a huge market. I agree completely.
Yeah. And that was one of the things I had to work on. Was I used to be very like soft in that area, where like they're like, this is what I want. I'm like, okay, let's see if it exists. Right? I'm new. I'm stupid. I want and then as you get into it, even for new agents, they need to realize like time is money. So you want to serve the clients the best way possible, but you need to serve the right client. So if you meet someone that's totally unrealistic, then it's like you either set those expectations or you got to move on.
You just said the most powerful thing. Because every client is a potential payday and we are living off of client to client, right?
Right.
Because of that, we tend to hold each one of them so And then we end up wasting time and money because we think this client is our next payday instead of looking at the whole client and saying, could be a huge waste of time. So the best skill I ever taught a new agent was learn to let someone go. Like learn to let go. I mean, is that something you had to work through?
Yeah. So what I've done is I kind of let them make that assumption. So I say, look, based off what you're asking, here are these properties. Based on your price point, here's what's available. Or in LA, what kind of makes this unique? I mean, I guess everyone says their market's unique, so let's go with that. Of course, right? But LA has 209 neighborhoods. So if someone gets priced out of one neighborhood, they can go to the next neighborhood. Yeah. Right? Which is why we don't see as much volatility in our market. But it's like, if someone's like, hey, my price point's $1 million, but I want a 3,000 square foot house, it's like, it doesn't exist where you want. But if you want it, you got to go over here. Well, I don't want that. I'm like, then something's got to give.
Where did it impasse, right? Is that what happens? Yeah.
Exactly. So like, I don't have to necessarily fire them. Because like, even if their expectations aren't realistic, maybe they're a referral. Maybe they could refer someone that's like, hey, look, I couldn't find what I wanted, so I ended up having to move out of state. But here's Rick. He was willing to tell me as it is.
Yes. Honesty.
Yeah.
Not like
we'll value that.
You're not chasing a white rabbit forever.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
This actually falls under the idea of like overlooked skills when you become an agent. Like I think when you get licensed, I preach this all the time on social media. You take a test to get your license that tells you the legalities of your job, but there's nothing in there that teaches you the day-to-day fundamentals of your job, right? So you kind of get thrown into this and you have to kind of muddle. So give me from your perspective, some of the skills that have been overlooked, but are very useful to become a top producing agent. I mean, you've definitely discussed one of them here, but.
Yeah, I think negotiations is actually a really big one. And I think it's, so what I always do with my buyers, this is one of my little secrets, is when I look at properties that they're looking at, I sort by days on market. And I go with the oldest home.
And why do you do that? And why do you do that? Why?
Because those are like low hanging fruit. Everyone's like, what's wrong with it? And I'm like, it could be nothing. It's either overpriced or the agent's doing poor marketing. Those are the only two reasons why a property doesn't sell.
Or it could have a problem, but
that would be reflective of the price.
Correct. Yes, correct.
So exactly. So it's like, okay, this hasn't sold because I don't know, something's not permitted. It's like, okay, well, let's see if we can talk to the sellers about getting it permitted. Or it's tenant occupied. Has anyone asked if the tenants would be willing to leave? There's a property that we're going to write an offer on this week where the agent, in the private remarks, he misworded what he wanted to say. So basically there's a house and then there's a second unit, and it's like main house is tenant occupied and the ADU is tenant occupied month to month. The tenant's willing to leave. But like we all read that as the smaller unit is month to month and the smaller unit is willing to leave. So I call him and he sounded annoyed. He's like, no, they both can leave. It's been on the market for a year.
Oh my gosh. And
it's like we all misunderstood what they were trying to say.
And then what that turns into is an opportunity for your client to negotiate price, negotiate costs, negotiate, which is not option available if it's new.
Exactly. Yeah. When something's fresh on the market, it's hard to negotiate. I have clients that do. If it's listed for $1, they want to offer 97 cents. Like,
they just want a deal.
Yeah, exactly. And I've had clients like that. So then I'm like, okay, well then why show them anything new? So I only showed them properties that were either on the market forever or I knew were overpriced.
Yes. And I will say this, I don't know, because I'm in a different market, but our market, like they are all on Realtor and Zillow and they know everything. So if I don't show it to them and it's freshly listed, they're asking to see it. But if my clients need closing costs, okay, that's already an 8 to 10K negotiation off list, right?
Yeah.
I have to tell them it has to be on the market at least 7 days before we see it. Because what happened was we go see it, they fall in love, and heartbreak after heartbreak. And guess what? That's all time and money and gas spent, and they're positioned to do anything. But if we just wait and it's there a week later, then we can go see it because now we stand a chance.
And they get frustrated.
I know.
And that's when the blaming starts.
And it always comes.
I've been blamed for so much stuff that wasn't my fault. And I'm like, okay, it's just what it is.
What are you going to say? What are you
Yeah. I'm like, oh, you didn't get the house. Okay. Someone offer more.
But it's my fault.
Right. Yeah. But it's your fault that you didn't negotiate it down to $1.
So in my experience, this is setting very clear expectations. And I used to be a communications professor. I taught university first life. And so, like I said, while you were on the courthouses making crazy money, I was learning to teach. And I learned, but in the teaching years, I learned that if you set up expectations and you literally spell out all potential outcomes, like guys, here it is, and you literally lay it all out, then it's harder to put the blame back on you because everything was spelled out. And so when it happens, it's like, well, she did say, and then I'll even give them like, we'll see 3 and lose. I'll be like, because I'll say, guys, we're not going to get him. Here's why. We can go, so then we go, we lose, we go, we lose. And finally like, okay, let's just wait 7 days. Like they finally understand, because sometimes you have to let them experience it.
Right.
Because they're not going to believe you if you tell them. So you're like, look, here's why this is not a good idea. I'm going to let you experience this. And then, let me know when you're ready, and then they're always like, but then sometimes they do still get frustrated, just disappear out of the market. And you're like, well, here we are, like, again, never firing anybody. They just kind of
go on their own.
Yeah. And I think too, you like, if you're able to establish extreme value in the process, you're likely to not lose them in the end. Like, I know you had a great experience with, how do you create that kind of value?
Yeah. So because my broker had the mortgage experience, he's seen, tens of thousands of appraisals. And so we then go into our MLS and we make adjustments like appraisers do.
Wow.
Which is great, like on the listing side, because when I meet the appraisers, I can speak their language. Oh yeah, this is C3Q3, which is condition and quality. Oh. And they're like, wait, you know what this means? I'm like, yeah. And like, so my properties tend to appraise because they're like, okay, I get it, he gets it. But it helps even on the buy side. So like I've had clients where I'm like, look, if it's multiple offers, I always tell my buyers, like, look, you offer what you feel comfortable with. If somebody else pays more, God bless them. And in some cases, I told him, like, I actually think those buyers overpaid. I think you dodged a bullet.
And they're probably grateful for that.
And then I send them properties. I'm like, these were actually better valued properties. Even if they're more expensive, I'm like, here's examples of better valued properties than the one you missed out on.
That's an incredible skill set. I have told every agent, if you list a property, you need to spend time talking to an appraiser. Man, you've gone further. It sounds like you went to appraisal school basically. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think agents could stand to go through a course, just because it doesn't just add value, but it actually allows you to negotiate. And our negotiations are not always just like I want to talk about that quickly because they're not just about the negotiation of the value of the home on the initial offer. You're just discussing negotiating with appraisers. Like, so if you can go, like, how do these negotiation techniques separate great agents from average ones? You highlighted one, but what else have you experienced?
So most agents just say, here's sales in the area.
Yeah.
And then they like, here's comps.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like I helped a family member with this happened to be a refinance. But a lot of these appraisers aren't from the area. They're driving from wherever, like Orange County, whatever. So in this particular example, the appraiser came from like 2 counties over. So I had to explain, it's like, okay, homes north of this street sell for more. Here's why. Appraisers don't know that. No. I mean, sometimes they do because they're super local, but a lot of them don't. So you have to educate them on those neighborhoods. LA is not very school driven because LA Unified isn't a really great school district, but some of the elementary schools are great. And so homes on one side of the street might sell for more than the other side because of the schools.
That is so empowering.
Right. So it's like, you need to explain these to the appraisers who may not know. They're just looking quarter-mile radius, homes that are as close to the same property as possible to make the least amount of adjustments. And you show them a list of improvements. right? If you already know there's going to be a problem like square footage, I sold a house where everything was permitted. It just wasn't updated in county records.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, you just have to explain that to them up front before they even ask.
So you're coming in like negotiating on the front end, like
Yeah. Because nobody wants to deal with a bad appraisal.
No, so it's really funny. I was in a bit of a battle with appraisers because they were saying that appraisals were completely objective, and my comment was they're actually very subjective. Like
Very.
thank you. I'm gonna tag that. It was a TikTok video, and I'm gonna tag this and stitch it onto my TikTok video because I got attacked by some appraiser on TikTok who was just like, this is very subjective. Because I said, you can't know 100% what an appraisal is going to come out to. Because like you said, to your point, they could come from other areas and not be familiar with your area and miss things. And so he was like, no, that never happens. I was like,
if you want, I will email you appraisals that were hundreds of thousands of dollars different on the same property. I had one that was millions of dollars.
okay, do it because I'm gonna put it in a stitch and then if you're on TikTok, like follow me, I'll tag you. Because I'll go find that comment and be like, ha ha ha.
Well, because what happened was this was a property in Malibu. We were in escrow at $5 million. So we had the appraisal at $5 million, but then we had one at 8.5. I'm like, that's so massively different. So I sent it to my broker who's familiar with Malibu. This was years ago. And he's like, yeah, the appraiser took comparable sales from like Malibu's version of like Billionaire Row.
Oh.
He's like, that's a whole nother world.
Not even comparable.
It's not even comparable, but he included it in the appraisal. So now, it's like,
that's regional too, maybe. Like this appraiser could be from an area of America that's more standardized.
Maybe. But even then, it's like, how do you determine condition and quality? Right? So, okay, this house was remodeled. Is that a $50,000 difference or is that a $100,000 difference? That's subjective. Square footage difference, that's subjective. So like, yeah, I see what the appraiser is saying in terms of like, well, if you have 1,000 square foot home and I find all these other 1,000 square foot homes, you're taking some of that subjectivity out of it. But at least in LA, each home is somewhat unique because some of these homes are so old. People have done add-ons, people have added pools. There's been so many changes that really no two homes are alike.
So this square footage, I get a lot of clients that'll come up and be like, oh, so I have a house listed right now. And he came at me and he's like, well, my price per square foot is blah, blah, blah. Tell me. Tell me.
I'm sorry.
On opposite sides of the country, feeling the same pain.
Oh, okay. Here's what people don't realize about price per square foot. This is why it's so grossly inaccurate. So for those listening, it's the value of the property divided by the square footage of the house. The problem is that value is both structure and land. So if you're adding square footage to a house, but you're not adding square footage to the land, so you can't do the price per square foot model. That would only work if you added to both land and structure.
I've never heard that before. Because I'm going to tell you the way I saw it. This is how I saw it. Price per square foot makes sense to me in only one capacity: a brand new development of brand new, right? Because cookie cutter, right? Once the development has passed its brand newness, then it is no longer viable as a price per square footage because of what you said. They updated cabinets, they like all the changes that get made. So now if you just took homes in an area and compare price per square foot, these are no longer apples to apples. These are oranges and bananas in a whole basket of things.
Well, but also using that logic, if two homes were each 2,000 square feet, but one was 4 bedrooms and one was 3 bedrooms, are you telling me they're the same value?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, and then this too, to the point, like, the average client who's not in this every single day can't.
Right.
This is why agents tend to have value if you're good at your job, because these nuances are not things that a client should have to consider. Like, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like, look, sometimes I'll look at the price per square foot because I know buyers are doing it. So it's like, okay, if you want to look at the price per square foot, here's where we land. But like what we were seeing in LA for a long time on the new development side was a lot of agents were including the garage. They were including overhangs. They were including everything to keep their price per square foot low, which then hurt us because people are coming through and saying, well, your new construction is way more expensive. So then like we had to start including the garage
You had to
because
oh,
we had to play the game, because otherwise we're sitting on the market because everyone thinks we're overpriced.
based off price per square foot. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I ran into an appraiser once who operated off a price per square foot. And I was like, what? Like, this is what my point about appraisers. They're still human. That's what I said to the guy. You're still human. Like, you still have a human element to your choices. Okay. What would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned? You look back at all your years from past negotiations that you could share with agents listening.
The person who cares the least has the most leverage.
Huh. Go on.
So for example, if you're a buyer, you're like, well, I like the house, but I don't love the house. Then it's like, then write a price you feel comfortable with. I call it the F it price.
Ah,
It's actually worked, by the way. I've had clients where they're like, I don't know if I like it. I'm like, what's your F it price? And it was listed for like $530. It was a townhouse. He's like, I don't know, $475. I'm like, F it, let's submit it. We ended up negotiating at like $499, then got another credit after the fact. But it's like, if you don't care, then you have more leverage.
yeah, absolutely.
And if you do care, give off the impression that you don't.
Yeah. So, well, in our market, like when it was pandemic market and things were here in our world, everything was being competed for. Everything.
Yeah, everything here.
I had to have that same conversation. I never used the effort price, but I did say, this is how I phrased it. What's the price that if we lose, you are relieved? What is that number? And because that to me was the break it.
Yeah.
Like, so when you're every time I'm in a competing situation, if they have the leverage, the room, because we use what's called escalation clauses here.
Oh, yeah, I did that.
Okay, so you're coming in at this number, but we'll go up. So like, well, we don't know what to escalate to. And you never want to be the one to tell somebody how to spend their money, because God forbid. So I'm like, I'm always like, what's the number that like when they say no, you're like, oh, thank God. Because if you don't feel like that, you're going to be upset at that you didn't get it.
Yep.
It could have been 5,000 more. Well, I would have done 5,000 more. Okay, what's the one that makes you relieved?
So when we bought our house, this was 2018. We were one of 17 offers, and it was priced artificially low.
Happens. Canada.
It happens.
No, Canada does that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I said, we'll do an escalation clause. And then we're like, what's the cap? I'm like, why put a cap? If they come back at a number we don't like, we don't buy it.
Yeah. You're like, oh, well.
Yeah. So it came really high. And I'm like, this is BS. They did this because they know it won't appraise, and then they want to renegotiate. Screw that. I want to be the one to be able to renegotiate. So we entered escrow, and we ended up negotiating it down to below what we initially offered. And we did it two ways. One was through inspections.
Okay.
So we said, hey, look, here's all these issues. But we did what's called the FHA 203K loan. So it's a construction loan. So you put 3.5% down of the purchase price plus construction costs, and you can finance the construction. So it was a fixer.
Okay.
So after we already negotiated the first round of inspections, I then went back and said, by the way, this addition isn't permitted, which is fine, but it's also not to code, so I have to tear it down. And that's where the agent, my broker, I had him represent me on this one, but the broker's like, but you already did your due diligence. We're like, no, you don't understand. We're fine with it, but the lender's not.
Blame someone else.
Right? Blame somebody who can't defend themselves. That sounds horrible, but it is. Yeah. So we need another price reduction. And they gave it to us.
Oh, because now they've gone so long in the situation. They're like, oh, I don't want to start again. Let's just do this. Like, yeah. Right.
Yeah. And there were other issues. So that particular one, the seller was selling because his wife had passed away. He wanted to move to the East Coast. We entered escrow. 3 days later, the listing agent gets a call from some random lady saying, why are you selling my house? She was never dead.
Come on.
Yeah, I kid you not. So when we got the call, I called my fiance at the time, said, so here's what's happening. I'm cracking up. And she's like, this isn't funny. I'm like, well, it's better than the alternative.
Yeah.
And the seller was an appraiser. Just happened to be. So I think he just got bamboozled. So so it goes back to the person who cares the least has the most leverage. He cared a lot about closing because he did not want to deal with his supposedly dead wife that's now back to life. So I had then more leverage.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah.
That goes to doing your digging and make sure
Yeah. It's like,
all
cool.
the nuance. That's crazy. All right.
Yeah.
Tell me something, because I know you've touched on the fact that was a fixer upper. So this investing piece has been such a huge part of your success. What can real estate agents learn from successful investors like yourself?
Talk to vendors and ask about updated pricing.
Okay.
So like I have to call my plumber today. I'm like, hey, what's the going rate for installing a clean out? What's the going rate for installing? Because the problem is prices are changing so much. And right now we have tariffs kicking in. So who knows? But it's one of those things where it's helpful to go in with a client if they're like, well, how much is this remodel going to cost?
And not just shove a number. You've actually got something to back it.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, the going rate's about this, but it changes every day. And I've been off before. That's when I learned my lesson. Especially because most of my clients are in the, we'll call it like starter home price point, even though I've done the luxury market, but the luxury market's a whole nother world.
Yeah.
Like you, because even then vendors charge more in the luxury market.
Yeah.
Right. I have an electrician friend of mine. He's like, well, I can charge Beverly Hills price, or I can charge Pacoima price, which is a lower price. It's like, I'm like, well, you're going to charge me the Pacoima price.
Right.
but like
business, right?
But yeah, so like understanding how much stuff costs, that's really probably one of the biggest helps, because even with listing homes, you're walking through and the seller's like, well, what work should I do? You need to be able to understand, like, okay, well, what's your budget? Here's what you could do within your budget.
Right. So you can actually help guide that.
Yeah, right. And you'll learn that nowadays, because cost of construction's up, chances are you probably shouldn't do really anything. You're probably better off selling it as a fixer at this point.
And that is probably one of the most valuable things as you negotiate with clients, right? So like the negotiation of a listing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You're adding value, because if they say, well, this other realtor said I should do X, Y, and Z, I'm like, yeah, but the cost of construction is this. You don't need dollar for dollar. You need what, $1.25 at least? Because you have to factor in commissions, closing costs, and you want to make more money.
You don't want to come out even.
Right. Unless you're doing it for marketability, which is a whole nother like value that doesn't have a dollar to it.
Right.
Right. People don't like popcorn ceilings. Maybe it does make sense to get rid of them.
Scrape it.
Yeah. I've done it. Didn't do a great job. I'm not handy. I am so not handy.
No, I'm not either.
Yeah. I did it for a friend of mine. Like we were just out there and the contractor came in. He's like, Rick, we had to redo it all.
I'd be putting holes in the wall.
Right.
That would be me. Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, so this is great for my next question. Like, how does an agent then go from being a transaction facilitator, which most of the world thinks that we are? It's the beef that happened in social media last year. How do we move from just, I was literally told once, all you do is write contracts. So how do you move from that perception to a trusted advisor? Like, give me your array of things that you've leveraged to get out of that thinking with people that you work with.
Yeah. So there's two things I do. One, I make fun of realtors.
As you should.
Yeah. I'm like, if they're like, well, I'm supposed to knock on the door, but I don't know if I'm supposed to wait. So I'll just pretend to be, I'm just a dumb realtor. And like, my clients get a kick out of it. But what I do is I say, look, I have different hats. I have realtor Rick, I have friend Rick, and I have investor Rick. So depending on who you ask, I might give a different answer. Friend Rick will deny anything if you try to pull it on me later on in life. Like, I never said this. But, there's some things that are just more practical.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of clients actually appreciate that honesty, and they understand that it's like, okay, well, Rick is wearing multiple hats. Yeah. There is different ways to look at this that other realtors may not be able to, because legitimately there are people who just open doors. And honestly, there are some top producing agents, and that's what they do.
Get out.
Because they're good talkers. They spend the money on marketing. They can talk that's just who they are.
But they're actually developing themselves in the industry.
Right. One of my mentors early on said a lot of realtors will learn, they'll do 1 year of experience and then just repeat that for 30 years. So really, they've been in the business for 30 years, but they only have 1 year's experience.
Oh, I've never thought about that.
Yeah. I had to deal with an agent a few months ago on that, where she wanted to do the price per square foot. I
Oh,
sent her comps and she's like, well, based on what you're saying, my house should be worth $200,000 more. I'm like, how is 200 square feet equal $200,000? And then I was like, oh,
price
I'm like, are you doing price per square foot? She's like, yeah, I've been in the business for 30 years. Don't you do this? And I'm like, no. And here's why.
Okay,
So
so
we got it down 50 grand and it appraised for 50 grand more. Actually appraised for almost the list price.
get out.
Yeah. I was like, she does not need to know this.
Listen.
Yeah.
What did it appraise for? Oh, you didn't pay for the appraisal. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. We're good.
Yeah. It met the requirements.
We're good.
Yeah.
How much was it you have to pay for that? Do you want to give them
Yeah.
$6? I don't know what appraisals got there. There's 600 here. So I'm like, do you want to pay?
It can be, yeah. Well, it's like what's annoying is agents will use that as leverage when you're trying to negotiate like request repairs, right? Like, well, it appraised for 50 grand more, so clearly the clients are getting a good deal. And I'm like, that's fake money.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything. They legitimately don't have the cash to do the work.
Yeah.
And the reality is, even though it appraised that high, obviously you didn't sell it that high.
Think under contracts. Yeah.
You know?
That's what I have to teach we dropped a price 10K and he goes, I just lost $10,000. I'm like, but you didn't, because
he never had it.
It's that they have such a different, it's hard to get them out of that. Like none of that exists until two people agree to pay it and it appraises for that. Like I always say, something is only worth what one person's willing to sell it for, another one's willing to buy it for, and it appraises for. That's all it's worth.
Yeah, you're selling the home twice.
Yeah, you do. The rest is hopeful thinking, wishful thinking, right?
Yeah.
But like back to your point about appraisals and the power you have with the knowledge that you have. Anyone listening, if you are a buyer or seller, this is the man you want to work with, because that appraisal information is so valuable, because you're not going to get your client to the 11th hour and have a big problem, right?
Right.
So how do you navigate your sellers when they want to overshoot and you've done your due diligence? How do you negotiate that?
Great question. So that actually happened to me recently, where it was a 3-bedroom townhouse with a yard. And the problem was it was 0 comps with a yard. I mean, this might as well have been a single family house because there was only one wall shared. And so what I told my sellers, like, look, we're going to list it at like 600, like 599. It's going to get bid up. Just be prepared for another round of negotiations.
Okay.
Because and we all agreed, like, this is going to be a challenging appraisal. Ended up getting all the way up to 650. I couldn't negotiate an appraisal waiver from any of the buyers. I know. I was like, damn it. So I just told my sellers, like, look, we don't know if this is going to appraise or not. So we're going to have to go through that battle. Good news is we picked a buyer that has money in the bank.
It didn't appraise?
It did not appraise. It appraised for what we listed it for. And what sucked is when I met with the appraiser, I said, look, I live in the area. I'm literally up the street. You can look at comps in this neighborhood, because he's like, oh, no, I can't do that. That's a nicer neighborhood. The dude took comps from like the ghetto.
Come on.
I'm like, dude, this is a joke.
You couldn't get. So here they have something called Tidewater. So whenever it doesn't appraise, it's called Tidewater, and they notify the listing agent, and you have, basically 48 hours to negotiate with the appraiser. So,
right. And but that's assuming they'd listen.
So
we negotiated at like 635.
Wow.
So it's like, but my seller's still happy because he still got over asking.
Yeah. But that guy had to come out of pocket.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
But it was a conversation with the agents. Like, look anywhere in the valley. In the so LA is kind of, to make it easy, we're divided in half. We have the San Fernando Valley, which is the northern portion, which is usually lower price points. And then West Side and the rest of LA, more expensive. But I was like, look anywhere in LA, where are you going to find a 3-bedroom, single-story townhouse, only one shared wall, and like a decent yard?
Really? Yeah. So this guy,
you know what I mean?
The clown, but you're not going to get this somewhere else. So do you want it or not?
Exactly. That's really where the conversation had to go. I was like, I'm not trying to be a dick. It's just like, this is a good value.
Well,
and you know it.
Someone else, if you don't like.
Yeah. And so we were willing to compromise. And the clients are and the buyers are fine because they get it. Because I was like, look, a house is going to go for 900,000.
Yeah.
The same thing. If the wall was like detached by like just like half an inch, boom, it's 900,000.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I ran into that too. I have to tell my sellers because I don't know if you've seen this. I don't know if this affected LA, but like here, the pandemic, every year it was like a 50K increase. Now, mind you, our average home is 300,000. So that's why it was 50 to get to every year you're going up 50K. Like this never happened in the history of real estate, really, to have to improve that quickly. When the pandemic ended, and I could tell you the month and the day that it turned, when like the market, I could feel it coming. And I told my clients they had a house for 899,000, and I said, "You better take this cash offer," because they were fighting about the repairs. I said, "I do not think you'll get 899 in another month." And as literally the next month, the whole market here turned, and houses started sitting, reducing, and we've been in this ever since. So. But if you're not in the business and in the market, you still think that your houses have increased annually at this exponential rate. So I'm having to tell my sellers, and this is how I say it. I say, look, this is what your house is worth based off what is sold in the last 6 months in your area. Here's 3 comps. And I said, this is the best I know how to do, but this will come up in appraisal. We can go higher, but you must be prepared for X, Y, and Z. And then I summarize all of this in an email and I send it because I learned they don't remember what you said. It's like they remember what you want to hear, but they don't remember. And so I summarize it in an email so that when it comes down the wire and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, because I already knew it wouldn't, then we go back to like, hey, no, remember I said. So like, that's been my market's experience with appraisals.
We've had some of that too. And even with the email, because I do the same thing. If they get pissed later on or whatever, it's like, you know what? I said my piece. I did my job.
If you didn't want to remember it.
It's no problem.
I told you. Yeah. Like, and I try to be really gentle about these things because people are
of course,
about their properties. And it's a personal thing for a lot of people too. Like this is
their home.
Yeah. Like, it's funny too how people like who've lived in it and they've done their little changes to the house, and to them the value is just here. And you're just like, I love that for you. Like there's a house, so $1 million market. I'm just getting into luxury, but that's because I'm dipping in like an hour away into lake country. But here we have like a handful of over $1 million properties, and there's this one, and they've got it at 1.7. It's only worth probably 1.5 all day. They were at 2.2 to start because they built it and brought in top high-end everything. So have you run into, it's got to be there in LA where like you over improve a house like that, like, and a lot of it was landscaping. They have probably got $500,000 just in their like retaining walls that has their pool, the retaining wall for their the retaining wall work, like just that alone.
It'll be tens of thousands.
It's more like it's so much. And so they want something that the market doesn't find the same value in. Does that happen?
All the time? And actually funny that we've been talking about appraisers, because like appraisers don't care. Like, because the problem is everything's on a general basis. So buyers come through, or like an appraiser comes through, and they're like, well, they don't do line items of value for each individual item. It's just how does the whole thing put together? But when I have clients who are going to do improvements, like one I did a few years ago, I actually sent them comps of properties in their neighborhood slightly higher. So I said, use these homes as inspiration for your remodel.
Amazing. That is amazing.
That way they don't have to worry about necessarily overbuilding for the area.
Wow, that is so smart. But see, some of them don't act. So do you know, I've literally sold homes and I said, if you finish this basement, please call me first. I know what buyers are going to want the basement to look like. I know what appraisers find value in a basement. Please call me. I've sold homes and then they're like, we redid the basement. And then you get down there, no bedroom has a window. No, like, oh my gosh, I can't. We spent 50K. It's probably worth 20.
But it's like, look, if you're gonna like, and I tell my clients, like, if you're gonna do something for yourself, like, there's value there.
Yes. Well, that's it. Know that the value is for you personally.
Correct.
Not you resale value.
Right. So one of the things I started doing recently is equity reviews for clients.
Okay.
So with like my past clients, I've done like 10 or 12 so far, I think. I meet with past clients, and sometimes like referrals, like I have friends that refer me a lot of business, but they already own a home. So we go and say, look, this is not a listing appointment. You meet with your financial advisor once a year. You meet with your CPA once a year. Let's talk about your home. So we say, based off today's market, your home's worth somewhere in this range. Here's what's going on in the market.
I love that.
And then I go a step further and say, look, this is what it would rent for.
Okay.
And then we do subscribe to a service that takes data from a variety of sources, and they give like potential appreciation rates over the next 5 years. So like sometimes I include that, but then it also gives me a chance just to ask questions. Hey, not just, hey, how are you? What are some of your goals?
Yeah. And then retouch these people. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Or like I have a client where we've been selling off a lot of his properties, but we're down to 3 properties in LA. His takes the longest because some of them are investment properties, but like we go through all 3. And like it's funny because he's a numbers guy. So he's doing the math and he looks over at his wife, he's like, just on one property, we've been making $50,000 a year in equity.
Wow.
I'm like, you're welcome. So every time he makes fun of me for me spending his money, just remember this.
Another reason you are a great option for investors. Actually,
Right?
do you have any investment strategies for agents? Like something that you can leverage?
I love house hacking.
Okay.
When you buy a place, you rent by the room, you rent out a second unit, low down payment, better interest rates. You are renting anyway. So even if you're paying out of pocket, it's still better than the alternative. And if you're in a higher price point, you can start using HELOCs as leverage.
So explain a little more, one, about house hacking. That's not a phrase I've heard in my network. So I'm assuming
Okay.
that people not familiar. And then 2, the HELOC. But yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So house hacking, it's a great way to get started in investing. It's how a lot of my clients do it. So they'll buy a property and like, for example, I'll use one of my clients as an example. Helped them buy a house. It's a 4-bedroom house and an ADU. In terms of adding value, that was a good one because it was multiple offers. The ADU wasn't permitted yet. So I offered to help them get it permitted.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so he lives in 1 bedroom, rents out the other 3 bedrooms, single guy, and then he rents out the ADU.
Shoo.
Yeah. And as you get, older, you get married, like that starts to shift a little bit. But then what you do is then that can become a full-time rental later on because you can move to the next one. Right. Or in his case, and what I've done for my clients is he'll do the HELOCs, home equity line of credit.
Okay.
So it's like a second mortgage. But a lot of clients will use that as a down payment for the next purchase.
Ah, I'm loving this. Okay.
So not all lenders are okay with it. I've never had a lender not do it. But yeah, I did a HELOC on my condo to help buy this house. I technically bought this house 0 down.
Okay.
And then I did a HELOC on this house. And then with a business partner, we bought properties. And then I sold my condo and then bought another one, fixed it up, did a cash out refi. So I actually am closing on a property today. It'll be the first time I've actually had to use my own money.
So you're leveraging.
Exactly.
You're leveraging the equity. Tell me if I'm right. Leveraging the equity in a home that you have to then go and put a down payment on a one.
Yep.
That you're then using as a rental.
Correct.
Okay. And then
or your next
or you
personal
get
residence.
when you were in and then go do this.
Right. So So I used a HELOC on my condo. The trick is to do the HELOC while you're still living there. Right. Because it's harder on investment properties. Okay. So you get the HELOC, wait a couple months, because it has to show up in your bank account for seasonal stuff. And then I had buddies of mine that were going to rent out my condo anyways. So I got them to sign up the lease, and then we bought the next one. So using my client where he had the 4 bedrooms, I actually met with the appraiser for the HELOC. I went through the comps to get it to appraise as high as possible because it's self-serving. Because the more money he makes, the more properties he can buy.
Right.
And I've helped him buy 2 more.
That's a win-win.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. He gets investment properties.
2 more.
And yeah. So we're up to 3 properties, and I met him in 2021.
I love that. I need to dip more into HELOCs. Not common. I'm in more of a like school district area. families, investments are not as prevalent as they probably would be in a major city like Los Angeles. So
Right.
I'm small town America. But yes, thank you for that. Okay, I know we're running so short on time, and I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
They're not just gold nuggets, they're platinum nuggets. So I want to finish up with, you have a platform. Can you just run through the platform and what it does and is and how people can find you?
Yeah, I mean, if someone wants to find me, they can find me on all the social media networks. I'm at Rick B. Albert. I did start my own podcast, so the Keys to the City of Angels, where we focus on all things real estate, but then I try to bring a focus on Los Angeles, because Los Angeles is a very complex city between rent control laws and even investment strategies. A lot of my clients actually now invest out of state, so we look a lot into that. So those are some of the ways that people can find me. And you're asking earlier, what is a big difference between certain agents? A lot of agents don't go all in on real estate.
It's not their game. It's not their
right. It's like, no, I invest.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Even if it's out of state, I invest out of state. I started this podcast. Like, I am all things real estate because I love it. I told people, like, I don't have to be a real estate agent. If someone offered me a great paying job, but as long as it's related to real estate, I'll jump in. Like, it's the passions is in this, because you work both sides of the brain, right? Creativity, analytical, and everyone has to have a roof over their head. It's not going anywhere. This is not the metaverse.
Even though they've tried to move all of these properties into the metaverse. Have you heard about that?
Yeah.
NFT, you can buy every property as an NFT. Why are you
Something like
a fake property in some?
Yeah. I had a friend of mine who's like, you should invest in the metaverse. I'm like, why? Oh, they're going to do concerts. I'm like, but those people have to have a house to live in the real world.
Physical beings.
Yeah.
I can.
Real estate investing it can be super boring, and it should be. Right. And that's okay. It doesn't, like, people overcomplicate it so much with, I want to do seller financing. I want to flip homes. It's like, no, I buy rental. Do I make a lot of money off it? Not today.
You will.
But I will.
But you will.
And while everyone else is waiting, I'm buying up all these properties.
Well, if you ever need to invest on the East Coast,
I will let you know.
Because our little town is a huge college town. So I get.
Which college?
We've got the biggest Christian university in the United States, Liberty University. And we're just south of UVA, but we're too far south for that. Well, we just have we have two other universities and then 2 more colleges. We're just a heavy renter area.
Yeah. College housing is a big deal. One of my clients, he does that. He rents by the room to college students.
You buy the room. Yeah. So
that's his strategy.
The math on what's out here and what it costs. And I have investors from DC that I work with. So like, I do work with investors, but not locally. And then they just show up with their money. I don't know where they get it.
Have you noticed that? I thought there wasn't that much cash on the market. I'm finding out there is tons of cash out there.
I was once told this very recently. There are 2 tiers of existence in the world. And the tier that most of the world lives in is the 9-to-5 tier, where we do loans and all this kinds of, but there is a very, very real tier that has just hosts of income, disposable income. That's why when they said everyone that's so concerned as an agent about rates and this and the market and that, they're missing that there will always be people who are going to be able to afford to buy and sell. And you just shift I always tell an agent, you're never without business. You just have to shift who your client is.
100%.
Based on what's going on in the world. That's what you do.
100%.
And then those 70% last year, I guarantee did not know that or think that. And that's why they didn't sell.
Yeah, I agree. They thought it was easy because it was easy in 2021.
It's easy.
Like, I made the most money. I made so much money that year. And I was like,
because nobody wanted to work. That was the other thing. I had people calling me being like, I can't get anyone to answer a phone because everybody's at home afraid of the pandemic. Right or wrong, that's where they were. And so any of us that were brave enough to get out there, we were drowning. So
I did deals between 4 counties. I had to have my wife drive me during my showings on the weekends because I need to be able to write offers while on the road, because otherwise I'd be at home working for another 3-4 hours. She's like, well, if I'm going to spend quality time with you, I might as well be your driver.
I love it. All right, let me wrap up this podcast.
Go for it.
Thank you so much, Rick Albert, for joining the Platinum Agent Podcast. You have given many platinum nuggets of information. I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you for having us, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. That's it for this episode of Platinum Agent Podcast. If you're ready to take your business beyond gold and into platinum, let's connect. Reach out to me at this email, renee@reneeruthofficial.com, and we'll make something happen. Don't forget, hit subscribe because Joshua and I will be back with more insights. Until then, go platinum.